Say this. Now, yeah, before we get started, the thoughts and views expressed today on this show, are those of Antoine and myself and do not necessarily reflect the views of TOPS, WKCG, and or its management. So any thoughts, comments, suggestions, or complaints should be directed to Real Talk with Herschel at gmail.com.
Okay, Herschel. In the last segment, we heard the critique, and the critique, if I may fairly summarize it, was that we're in a pandemic. Gas prices are higher than ever.
Mm-hmm.
Food prices are higher than ever.
Mm-hmm.
And we have institutions that we have spent decades paying money into that are absentee in terms of the material service of our people and our communities. And again, as Herschel said, if this description does not apply to you, these criticisms are not for you. But for those that does apply to,
Talking to you.
yes,
Talking to your behind.
absolutely.
That's right.
That's the criticism. And I suppose my question is this: what is the solution? How do we, as not just adults, but as adults in circumstances where we have needs that our circumstance cannot provide, how do we as adults create institutions or make churches into institutions that are responsive to our needs? What is the solution?
I don't know if you can make something into something that it's not, first of all. So again, if you harken back to the days of segregation, Antoine, where we couldn't go certain places, there were black co-ops, black people shared, there was no homelessness. I even remember as a child, my mother would feed people and give clothes away instead of throwing them out. And this wasn't a practice that just my mother did. This is what people did. So people that were less fortunate. What happened to hand-me-downs, Antoine? I know that you can probably remember. You had little cousins. You would give them your old clothes, or you get your cousins' old clothes. So nobody went without. We were self-sufficient because we had no choice. We have to learn to love ourselves again. We've lost ourselves in accepting this nightmare that we're in. We've lost ourselves and bought into the American nightmare. So now we believe in me. We don't believe in us anymore. We've been tricked into believing that we are our own enemy, and we are not the enemy. We are our friend. We are our solution. And once we realize it, we can solve this, whether it be by forming a community activist group, a community watch group, and these things will filter into the churches, because either they'll fall in line or people will stop doing it.
Well, you also have to keep in mind that a church isn't necessarily a self-sustaining entity. It's a reflection of the values of the community.
Exactly.
And if the community's values are selfish, if the community's values are not forward-looking, if the community's values are not progressive, then those problems are going to be reflected within the church itself. So, when you're talking about the church, the original definition of the church and the body of the church was defined by fundamentally by its membership. So, if you're talking about a church separately from its membership, if you're pointing a finger, you're still got three fingers pointing back at you.
Yourself. That's right.
And so I think that part of the problem and part of the reason why black organizations, and this is actually what this is about. We're talking about the church. You're talking fundamentally about one of these central organizing factors and figures and institutions inside of our community. Now, we can talk for a while about the history of that, about the problems with that. But for now, we need to understand that this is the way it is. So if this is what we have, how do we make that work for us? How do we make that work for us? And part of the ways that we can make that work for us is to tether our expectations for our institutions to the material. And to use simpler language, I remember I saw a talk with a professor. He was talking about the process of fielding judges, and he said that if you set up an organization that successfully gets a judge elected, and you don't know whether that judge is going to rule in your favor, you have a problem.
Right.
And I think that same factor applies to organizations we fund. If we have organizations that we are spending money to, we have organizations that seem to have unlimited funds for buying property, or for adding to its own building funds, or for buying vans, or for buying new houses for preachers. If we have that, and we can't get what we need when we need it, you need to start asking fundamental questions. And I think that part of the problem with us is that when it comes to churches, there's an exception involved where we assume that the church's responsibility only rests on the material. But Jesus did not feed the hungry with words; he fed them with food. And that is a standard that we need to apply to the institutions that work for us. Now, this is a standard. And the thing about this is that this is not a new concept. During segregation, the churches were central in organizing the people and defying the state to organize the people.
Right. Exactly. So again, Antoine, for those that are listening, understand what we're saying. We're adults. We should be adults, and we should be able to have a rational and a fruitful discussion and a truthful discussion. We are in our condition because we are not dealing as adults. Let's talk about it. And part of it is conditioning, and part of it is comfort. It's hard for people to change. It's hard to acknowledge the fact that you've been doing something and wasting your time. Nobody wants to do that. Nobody wants to be, including myself.
Fallacy. That's
right. Nobody wants to admit that I was wrong and do something else. Change takes a little pain, a little discomfort, but it promotes growth. If we want to grow as people, if we want to grow as a community, we have to be honest. We have to examine things honestly. We have to be able to have adult conversation and not defer to, that's just the way it is. Or that's the way my daddy did it. This is my grandmother's church. This is my father's mosque, or whatever. We have to have adult decisions and adult conversations if we're going to have an adult future.
And we need to, part of being an adult is understanding the role that accountability plays in civic discourse and social existence. If you have an institution that is not accountable to you, who has outcomes that are not accountable to any kind of consequence, you need to be asking sincere questions about the sustainability of that institution and about the nature of your involvement in it.
Very well said, Antoine. Very well said. Again, you're listening to Real Talk with Herschel, WKCG 99.1 on the FM.